You're watching TVC Breakfast. Nigerians say they want the impact of a downslide in the country's inflationary figures to be felt in real terms.
Nigeria's inflation rate dropped to 11.2% from 11.4% in May, its lowest rate since July last year. Data from the National Bureau of Statistics shows a reduction in the Food Composite Index to 13.6% from 13.8% in May, but index to 13.6% from 13.8% in May. But Nigerians share mixed feelings on this data.
Nothing has really changed in respect of the inflation because prices are still high. We can't still meet up with paying of our bills. Really, you have to earn more. Most people are doing more than one job. You understand? They call it side hustle and so on. And the bills are rising.
A little bit changes in the price compared to last year. Because I know we are getting there, we should be positive.
To me, my assumptions in this country, I think we are growing.
June's inflation figure is the lowest so far this year. Experts predict a worsening inflationary trend in coming months amid the central bank's economic growth policies and possibilities of the minimum wage implementation. This is definitely not cheering news to the public, who foresees it further depleting its purchasing power. The people now want the authorities to find ways of managing the situation.
We have to step up agriculture. And those that are giving credit to agricultural or to farmers, they have to step it up so that farmers can have access to all the inputs that are necessary for them to practice agriculture.
They should step up in their policies and the laws they make to be able to see that the thing will be affecting the masses positively.
What matters to the average Nigerian is the ability to feel that decline in inflation figures in real terms, which is basically their ability to afford the basic necessities of life with their earnings, no matter how much it is.
Joining me now to talk about this issue via Skype is Anne Nwachukwu. He's a public policy specialist. Good morning to you. What's your explanation for this latest inflation figures? How does it look from your end?
Yes, thank you so much and good morning. It is true that the inflation rate has dropped, the lowest we have had since July 2018. Talking about how it affects the lives of Nigerians on the street, you see, it is true that it has dropped, but there are other macroeconomic indices that are also clouding this drop in inflation rate. One of them is, even though it's still at 11.2, you see a double-digit inflationary rate. It's still very, very high. We have not yet achieved the single digit. Then you look at insecurity. People talked about inability. The food prices are still high. So if you come from the angle of insecurity, you see farmer-herdsmen clashes. It's still affecting production. Food production is still very, very low, and people are unable to make purchases as they want. Then you look at other factors like extreme poverty. Nigeria still remains very, very high, the highest in the world of extreme poverty. So these are factors that are, stampeding or suffocating the ability of people to purchase essential goods and services. Then you look at unemployment.
And then there are projections that it could slide further. What do you think it will be? Are we going to see a persistent decline, hopefully?
Yes, the projection is that it's going to be, the decline will be progressive. It will keep dropping from the economic, the extrapolations economists have done. But beyond the drop, it needs to translate to, significance to ordinary Nigerians. Even if the inflation is dropping and people do not have jobs, people cannot make effective demands. It's not going to, the impact will not be felt much. So in as much as the monetary policies are adjusting the inflation, we need to do more on creating jobs. People need to have jobs to be able to purchase. People need to be secure to
just before we take a breather at this point now, your final words on the stall in the implementation of the minimum wage with this figures 11.22, how do you marry them together?
Yes, the government needs to speed up the implementation so that workers will have more money to spend. So implementation is key. Once implementation is key and wages of workers improves, they will have more money to buy. So as it stands now, it's still, the statistics are there, but people are not feeling the impact. So I call on the government to quickly implement the national minimum, the new national minimum wage.
Annie Nwachukwu, thanks a lot for your analysis.
Joining me now via Skype is Annie Nwachukwu, a public policy specialist. Annie, it's good to have you join me right now. Nigerians are failing to reconcile or justify where the inflationary figures are going down, improving, but the commodity prices or food prices don't go down at the same. In fact, they are rising. Help us reconcile this. Prices don't go down at the same. In fact, they are rising. Help us reconcile this.
Yes, thank you so much. The answer is simple. One, there are political, economic questions that are stopping Nigerians from reaping from the gains of low inflationary rates. One of them is insecurity. Insecurity in the country, rural banditry, and farmer herdsmen clashes. This has not allowed the food supply to grow. So it is eating up the gains that should accompany the low inflationary rates. Another one is unemployment. Unemployment is still very, very high in our country. And then the incidence of extreme poverty. So many people, even though the inflation is low, so many people, their purchasing power is still very, very low. They are poor. They are living in poverty. They cannot meet up their demands. So these three key factors are eating up what should have been the gains of low inflationary rates, especially on the side of Nigerian workers and the
all right.
populace, the masses.
Okay, if the figures are supposed to actually calculate the reality of what is on ground, and you talk about the issue of insecurity and unemployment, and maybe even someone might talk about the issue of infrastructure and the poverty. If the figures are supposed to calculate this in real terms, and we have these challenges, so where is the figures? What is making the figures go down? What is responsible for that?
Yeah, thank you. If you look at the components of the CPI, the Consumer Price Index, you look at the components, the elements that make up that index are mostly, it's a basket of essential goods and services that Nigerian purchase. So by and large, it varies from country to country. And they look at the day-to-day needs of Nigerian buyers at the retail level. But most times, it does not include the big economic issues like insecurity, the big political economic issues like unemployment, like these issues you have mentioned, the deficit in infrastructure. So that's why it can come down, and yet the citizens cannot feel the impact. Do you understand? So it's if government wants to really for citizens to deepen the gains of low inflationary rates, it has to go beyond the index and still look at the basic political economic questions, which is security. Security affects so many factors in the economy: security, unemployment, and infrastructure. So that's why you can have the rates going down and people are not feeling it.
All right, Annie Nwachukwu, thank you very much for talking to us.
Joining me now via Skype is Annie Nwachukwu. He's a public policy specialist. Good morning to you, Mr. Nwachukwu. From your assessment, how much has the economy fared this year so far?
Yeah, thank you so much. So far so good. Government is doing everything possible to see how they can revive jumpstart the economy. As regards the the recent report by MBS, the 2019 report on inflationary rates, you see, it's true that the figure is down, the lowest since 2018, July 2018. But the truth is that Nigeria has failed to realize or to benefit from the benefits of low inflation. And the questions are not far-fetched. The reasons are not far-fetched. One, we are having deep political economic questions that border on security. Even though the inflation is low, farmers are not going to farms because of fear of insecurity, rural banditry, the herdsmen farmers clashes. So food production is still very, very low. Then you have the issues of of unemployment. Unemployment is still very, very low, over 23% of the working population. So, and you have, of course, the infrastructural deficit, and you have issues burden on
All right.
poverty.
All right, and then with all these indices that you've also reeled out, what are the options for Nigerians? Some have, many are towing the way of entrepreneurship, but just how far can they go?
Yeah, entrepreneurship is good, but there is a limit to what they can do without support. So government need to support, the micro and small medium enterprises, the SMSs. You need to support them with loans, with soft loans, with grants to grow the economy. Actually, the majority of in an economy, much of the jobs come from the private sector. So government need to strengthen, keep on supporting them, and then do investment. The issue of power is key. No nation will develop without power. God himself could not even start creation until there was power. He created light. So government need to do more. The new changes and reforms happening in the power sector need to be strengthened and guided, right, so that we'll have a better output in power supply. It will help in.
All right, we don't know who gets what. Talking about this new ministers now that are being screened, but what are your expectations for the new ministers of finance?
It's an enormous one. It's an enormous one. The issues around macroeconomic stabilities are germane. They are real. So government need to do more. Jobs. The Minister of Finance, the National Economic Council, they need to do more on creating jobs. The incidence of poverty is so high, and unemployment rate is so high, and we have a very energetic youth population. So the Minister of Finance, those who man the helm of affairs of the economy, need to do more on job creation and supporting the private sector to create jobs.
Annie Nwachukwu, many thanks for your analysis.